Do you ever play a game that's so good in core memory forming that for the next few months you feel like you're never going to encounter a game that gives you the same sense of joy or even obsession? Your mileage may vary because I'm a possibly unwell person, but I imagine that at least some of you relate to this sentiment. Some games just strike a chord so deep that they stick with you forever, for whatever reason. Maybe it's that game whose gameplay mechanics are everything you could possibly want in your favorite genre. Maybe it has an art or sound direction that resonates with you more than any other media you've ever experienced. Or maybe the storytelling speaks to you in a way you never knew you wanted to be spoken to. You probably immediately thought of a couple games that fit that criteria for you, and I could probably guess a few of them. Games that make people feel this way tend to be culturally influential and have either brought something entirely new to their genres, or they've refined their genres in such a way that there's no room for questioning why they're at the top of people's favorite games lists. That isn't to say that mega popular games that literally everyone has played or at least heard of are the only games that this idea applies to. Games that are very niche, or flawed in some way that prevents them from having wide appeal, still hold value for the players who carve joy out of them. I'm sure you've played games that are like, damn, this sucks, but I love it and there's never going to be another one like it.
My name is Becky.
For better or worse. So, what do I mean by too good exactly? I'm obviously not suggesting that a game is so good that it's bad, but when we play a game that's so good that it challenges our notions of how great a game can actually be, it naturally colors our perceptions of subsequent games that we play, especially if those games have a lot of similarities to our primo game. The next game might be great, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I really liked it, but. Or, I really wish it did such and such as well as that other game. This usually happens when the newer game doesn't differentiate itself enough from our new gold standard. If you say any of those phrases about a game, it's never going to be that once in a lifetime game for you. For those unforgettable games, you wouldn't even bother mentioning the flaws of the game to someone you're talking to the game about because the experience transcended any of its imperfections. Because of that, some games, even really amazing ones, are doomed to be an afterthought of a game that's just too good. So let's take a look at some of my 100% unbiased, objective picks. It's actually really biased. That just straight up ruin other games for you with how great they are. And what about them warps our perceptions, either justly or unjustly, of other games within their spheres of influence? Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was released by Sega in 2001 as an enhanced port of Sonic Adventure 2, and it became a defining entry in the series. It really pushed the boundaries of what people expected from a Sonic game at the time. It featured two distinct hero and dark storylines, multiple character playstyles, from the classic high-speed Sonic and Shadow levels, treasure hunting, mech shooter, and it did all of these things pretty well. And we got Shadow the Hedgehog, who at this point in time hadn't learned the magic of guns yet. And disregarding Shadow the Hedgehog was a huge blessing to the series as a foil to Sonic. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, oh my god, that's so much to say. 2 Battle became the definitive entry of the series. It set a new bar for Sonic games with its variety of gameplay and its more character-driven storytelling. The plot can be a little corny sometimes, but it explored relational dynamics between the characters that Sonic games up to this point hadn't really done. The game's balance of more traditional 3D platforming with more expansive levels than in past entries, its memorable soundtrack, and well-executed gameplay are still the standards that are set for the Sonic games today. Because of that, many fans who played the game in their formative years, me, have found it difficult to enjoy some future Sonic titles that have failed to capture the same magic. Newer entries falling short of this new standard set have left many fans, me, disillusioned with the direction of the franchise. Even for some of the later titles that were just okay, it's still disappointing to have that confirmation of, oh, well, I guess we're not back yet. Still, there's hope on the horizon. Frontiers and Sonic and Shadow Generations have been pretty well received, and I'm hoping that means that we are headed in the right direction. Did you think I forgot? All of that other stuff about Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, it was fine. Great even. But let's be real. It's all about Chow Garden. No question. Chow Garden is hands down the defining feature of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. All that other stuff, toss it out the window. Just give me the damn Chow Garden. Raising these little guys and making them race and fight was something that I spent hundreds of hours on. And I know that some of you did too. It's crazy how much care and detail went into the Chow Garden when it's really just a side mode. There are tools and resources that are maintained to this day to help you navigate the complexities of raising your Chow. There is a massive range of attributes and aesthetics that a Chow can have. There's swimming and running and flying and power and stamina. And all of these things have an effect in both like the racing modes, the karate mode, and just the way your Chow looks. The animals that you find throughout the stages affect your Chow's appearance and stats. And the amount of time that it can take to get like a super specific animal trait combination is mind numbing. It's just well designed from top to bottom. The materials you need to raise your Chow are found throughout the stages, giving Sonic Adventure 2 Battle probably the best replayability of any Sonic game. Anytime a new Sonic game is announced, you will always see a flood of comments asking if there's going to be Chow Garden, myself included. Granted, it isn't the only Sonic game with a Chow Garden. The Sonic Advance games also had a really bare bones kind of Chow Garden, but we can forgive that because you are able to connect it to Sonic Adventure 2 Battle to get special items and Chows that have higher base stats. So we're fine with that. Director's Cut also had a Chow Garden, but it's so bad that we're not going to talk about it. So, Sega, please just give me a fully realized Chow Garden. I genuinely believe that if Sega had implemented a Chow Garden that had improved upon the Chow Garden in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, it could have even saved the abyssal, inexcusable failure of Sonic 06. Maybe that's pushing it a little bit, but a part of me really thinks so. It's such an integral and iconic part of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle that I just truly don't understand why it hasn't come back. I swear to God, though, if it ever comes back as some mobile garbage gotcha cash grab, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. One of the most significant gaming phenomena in recent years has been the rise of indie games. They've shown that independent developers working with limited resources can produce experiences that rival and frequently surpass those of larger studios. Hollow Knight is the quintessential example of the new rise of prominence in indie gaming. Though, I would say that the rise of indie gaming really began quite a lot earlier than that. Let me know if you want to talk about it sometime. Hollow Knight set a totally new bar for Metroidvanias. Everything about Hollow Knight is immaculately polished, and it took what made games like Metroid, Castlevania, and Mega Man legendary games and upped the ante on what the genre could be. The combat mechanics are simple, but extremely smooth and gives plenty of room for creative player expression. The setting, Hallow Nest, is a gloomy, dreary world that's reflected beautifully through its soundtrack and the backdrop of a once vibrant past that fell to ruin. Despite that, all the characters are so charming and full of life and personality. The sounds they make and their cute, bouncy animations contrast the setting perfectly. And it's done in a way that doesn't clash with the general atmosphere of decay and ruin. The cute, charming characters don't feel at all out of place in Hallow Nest because they're a reminder that even in a fallen kingdom, there are still tiny pockets of life that thrive. Even when you're at one mask, about to be gunned down by primal aspids, or given an investment banking opportunity that you should definitely take advantage of if you're new to the game. Hollow Knight is by far my favorite game of all time. It's with me everywhere, literally. I have so many Hollow Knight tattoos. Let's compare it to another Metroidvania that I really liked, but misses the mark in a few ways that prevents it from being iconic. It's a game whose similarities to Hollow Knight end up being a disservice to it and kind of marring the legacy of what is otherwise a pretty great game. Ender Lilies. I enjoyed Ender Lilies a lot. It takes place in a similar ruined kingdom setting as Hollow Knight, Its soundtrack is really amazing, and the gameplay customization options are pretty decent. But when I think of Metroidvania recommendations, I would only recommend Ender Lilies as oh, you need that Hollow Knight fix? This will give you a little dose of that. And I think that starts to show the cracks of why a game like Hollow Knight is just too good. Ender Lilies is a great experience, but at the end of the day, it is kind of just hollow light. It's a perfect example of how games that are too good color our perceptions of other games. Like the fact that I have this kind of meh feeling about Ender Lilies, like if I were to look at Ender Lilies in a vacuum, I wouldn't feel that way. But like because I've experienced Hollow Knight, I can't help but to compare Ender Lilies to it. The combat mechanics are good, but the basic attack being so linear makes some enemies really obnoxious to deal with, but not really in an engaging or challenging way. The customizations have really amazing presentation, but you discover pretty early on that there are a small number of things that are just flatly better than everything else. The plight of the characters is really sympathetic, and seeing the cutscenes of the past after you defeat a boss is one of the most satisfying experiences of Ender Lilies, and I really, really enjoyed those. But its characters lack the multidimensionality that make the characters of Hollow Knight so memorable. Because Ender Lilies is kind of just depressing through and through, we don't really get a lot of high highs, and it kind of desensitizes you to the low lows. Whereas in Hollow Knight, the lively characters are a breath of fresh air after your nerves are shot from a difficult boss fight, and it makes the heartbreaking moments of the game even more poignant. So let's look at Ender Lilies against an even more recent Metroidvania title, Animal Well. Animal Well, like Hollow Knight and Ender Lilies, takes place in a dark, gloomy setting. But where Ender Lilies can be kind of forgettable because it's impossible not to compare it really heavily against Hollow Knight, Animal Well carves out a completely novel experience that still shares similarities to both games. Within the first 15 minutes of playing Animal Well, I knew that like this is a special game. The movement is fluid and intuitive. The puzzles are challenging and fun. The art style is gorgeous. It reminds me of the Sega Genesis era in the best way possible. Animal Well blends Metroidvania and puzzle so brilliantly that any comparisons to Hollow Knight are to its favor rather than to its detriment, like with Ender Lilies. It demonstrates that even after the Metroidvania renaissance of the past decade, it's completely possible to avoid being a somewhat derivative at best and absolute rip at worst Hollow Knight title. Another revolutionary indie title that I talk about with my loved ones until they can no longer tolerate it is Undertale by Toby Fox, released in 2015. Its blending of 2010 style internet humor and iconic soundtrack that's performed in concerts all around the world, even now, and its lovable characters have made it one of the most recognizable video game titles in the past decade. Even if you've never played Undertale, you definitely know what Undertale is, and you definitely recognize Sans at the very least. There was a time on the internet where it was impossible to be on the internet and not see Sans everywhere you went. Undertale has all of the ingredients of a title that's just too good. Undertale's emphasis on player choice, particularly the ability to resolve conflicts non-violently, and its unconventional approach to combat and narrative structure, have made it a universally adored title. Its focus on turning traditional RPG mechanics into a morality litmus test for the player pulls the player into the game as an integral component of the story. Undertale is obviously not the first game to make the player's choices affect the outcome of the game's plot or story, but what I think makes Undertale stand out so much is that its execution of this concept is unparalleled. The game's humorous, wacky tone belies the character's depths, and it's done in a way that isn't ham-fisted. The horror aspects of Undertale are more nuanced than just, oh, ha ha ha, you did the bad thing to the cute, funny character. All of the characters in Undertale are really well written, and in all of the permutations of choices the player can make, you're always learning more and more about what makes these characters so compelling. Regardless of how you play the game, whether you're a saint or a total asshole, the characters shine in every route. It's something that would be really easy to execute poorly. Toby could have just forcibly subverted the lighthearted nature of the game by making the more violent choices you can make be a simple killing spree for the amusement of the player who's just pushing the boundaries of the game. It would have been similarly poor execution to undermine the horror of the game if the characters are all just one-note jokesters who the player has no reason to invest in. But Undertale does it right across the board. Its horror is really quite terrifying and in a lot of ways mystifying. Its humor is zany and weird, but it never feels out of place at any point in the game. It's moody and atmospheric, but it's also high energy and eclectic. Toby Fox's storytelling balances all of these things so well and packages them in such a unique way that Undertale really is nothing short of revolutionary. A game I regularly see people comparing to Undertale is Amori. In Amori, you control the shut-in protagonist Sunny, and you explore both the real world and a dream world where you tackle Sunny's fears and confront the cast's struggles with grief and trauma. The main comparisons I see people draw between Undertale and Amori are their pixel art style, their psychological horror, and that's about it. I had held off on playing Amori because people said that it was just very, very similar to Undertale, and I wasn't really looking for Undertale Light, but I decided to play it, and I was surprised at how dissimilar the games are to each other. I think Amori is a good example of a game that is pretty unfairly compared to Undertale. Having a pixel based art style and psychological horror are pretty flimsy comparisons, really. The commonalities between Amori and Undertale are more fairly attributed to Earthbound, which both games derive a lot of their inspiration from. I mean, I kinda get it. Prior to Undertale, when was the last time a pixel RPG was in the cultural mainstream? It's been a minute. So when Amori was released in 2020, it makes sense that people looked at it and said, oh, that game makes me think of Undertale. So when that association takes hold, someone interested in the game is probably going to ask, is Amori like Undertale? And they're going to find a lot of people who will be like, yeah, it's like Undertale. Where Amori goes right, though, is that within 20 minutes of playing the game, you'll quickly realize that Amori is not Undertale or even Undertale Light.
Yo, what are you doing? You want to be in the video? Okay.
Amori's battle system is more like a traditional turn-based RPG. And holy shit, look how beautiful this battle UI is. And Amori's tone is a lot more melancholy, and it leans a lot more heavily into the darker themes of the plot than Undertale does. And I think it does these things really well. Amori escapes being overshadowed by Undertale, where Ender Lilies fails to with Hollow Knight, because Amori just does its own thing and offers a completely unique experience to Undertale. So, what did you think?
Let us know.
Are you the kind of person who can't take off your nostalgia hat to give newer games a chance? Or are you good at setting aside your biases so you can look at new games through unclouded judgment? If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe because I have some other interesting conversations in the pipeline. If you didn't like it, you can eviscerate me in the comments. Anyway, if you stuck around this far, I appreciate it, and I hope you'll stick around for the next. I have to go. She's hungry.